Here's what nobody tells you about summer gardens. Most of them look incredible for about 6 weeks and then they quietly fall apart. By August, the beds that had you excited back in May are sun-bleached, sparse, and honestly a little embarrassing. And the worst part, most gardeners don't even realize the problem was never their soil, their watering schedule, or their green thumb. It was their plant list. After more than 2 decades working with perennials across nearly every U.S. climate zone, from frozen Zone 4 winters in the Midwest to relentless Zone 9 summers in the South, I can tell you with complete confidence that one thing separates a garden that looks stunning from July through September from one that fades out: choosing the right plants from the beginning. That's exactly what this list is. 15 perennials that carry real color all the way through summer, return on their own every single year, and honestly don't ask for much in return. The last plant on this list does something none of the others can, so stay with me until the end. Plant 1, Coreopsis tickseed. If you've never grown Coreopsis, prepare to be converted. This plant blooms from late May or early June and keeps producing cheerful, daisy-like flowers in yellow, gold, deep pink, and rich red all the way through September, sometimes into October. That's nearly 5 months of color from a single plant, and very few perennials anywhere can match that kind of endurance. What makes Coreopsis remarkable is that it was essentially designed for the heat that shuts other plants down. It thrives in full sun, asks for nothing more than well-drained soil, and once it's established, usually by its second season, it handles summer drought without flinching. If you garden somewhere that gets brutal, dry summers like the Midwest, the South, or the Southwest, this plant earns its place every single time. The most important thing you can do for Coreopsis is deadhead consistently. Remove spent blooms, and the plant responds almost immediately with new ones. Around late July, cut the whole plant back by roughly a third. That one step triggers a fresh flush of growth that keeps strong blooms coming well into fall. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in early spring to keep them vigorous. Bees and butterflies are constant visitors from the first flower to the last. USDA Zones 4 through 9. Plant 2, Echinacea coneflower. Echinacea feels deeply American, and for good reason. It's native to the prairies and open woodlands of the central and eastern United States. It fits into almost any garden style: formal borders, cottage gardens, wildflower meadows. And modern breeding has transformed the color palette dramatically. You're no longer limited to classic pink-purple. Today's varieties come in rich orange, warm white, deep magenta, and soft yellow. If you can find Magnus or Pow Wow Wild Berry at your local nursery, both are worth seeking out by name: stronger reblooming habit than older varieties, and better color intensity through the worst of the summer heat. Bloom time runs from late June through September in most U.S. zones, sometimes nudging into October in warmer regions. That's a long, reliable window right through the stretch of summer when a lot of gardens start giving up. For care, deadhead by cutting stems back to a side bud or leaf junction rather than all the way to the base. This tells the plant to redirect energy into new flowers rather than seed production. Full sun is ideal, though Echinacea tolerates a bit of afternoon shade in the hottest climates. Well-drained soil matters. This plant does not like wet feet. After establishment, it handles drought and sustained heat without complaint. Divide every 3 to 4 years in early spring or fall. The ecological value is exceptional. Bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds work the flowers all season, and the seed heads feed finches and sparrows through winter if you leave them standing. USDA Zones 3 through 9. Plant 3, Salvia perennial sage. Perennial salvia looks like it requires more attention than it actually does. The flower spikes are tall, dramatic, and intensely colored: deep purple, cobalt blue, rich pink, vivid red depending on the variety, and they rise above the foliage in a way that immediately draws the eye. But behind all that visual impact is a plant that asks very little of you. Bloom time starts in May or June and runs strong through August, with consistent deadheading extending that window into September. A light midsummer trim, cutting back by about a third, encourages a second strong flush of growth that some well-maintained plants push all the way into October in zone 6 and warmer. Full sun is non-negotiable. Salvia needs at least 6 hours of direct light daily to bloom at full strength, and poor drainage causes root problems quickly. Once established, it's one of the most drought-tolerant plants on this list. Overwatering is actually one of the most common. In mistakes, this plant does not want consistently moist soil. Fertilize lightly in early spring and then leave it alone. Heavy feeding produces lush foliage at the expense of flowers, which is exactly the wrong outcome. Maynight and Caradonna are two varieties that consistently outperform others in American garden conditions, both excellent rebloomers, both widely available. Hummingbirds target the tubular flowers, especially red and deep pink varieties. USDA zones 4 through 10. Plant 4, Gaillardia blanket flower. If your garden gets brutal summer heat, and you need a plant that doesn't just survive it but actively thrives because of it, blanket flower is the one. The blooms are bold and fiery, layered rings of red, orange, and yellow that look like something painted by the sun itself. They open in early summer and keep producing through the hottest weeks of July and August without slowing down. In warmer zones 7 through 10, blooms often start in May and run all the way to November. Gaillardia is one of those plants that performs better in lean conditions. Skip the heavy fertilizers entirely. Don't amend the soil with rich compost the way you might for other perennials. This plant originates from dry open meadows, and it blooms best when the soil is well drained and relatively poor. Rich soil produces floppy, overlush growth that flowers weakly. Too much moisture is the one thing that causes serious problems. Roots rot quickly in waterlogged ground. Give it full sun. Let the soil dry between waterings, and it rewards you with months of color. Deadheading matters here more than almost any other plant on this list. Keep up with spent blooms consistently and the plant keeps firing. Let too many sit and production slows noticeably. Divide every 2 to 3 years to keep plants vigorous. Deer-resistant, drought-tolerant, and built for the hot, dry summers that gardeners in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arizona deal with every year. USDA zones 3 through 10. Plant 5, Rudbeckia black-eyed Susan. There's a reason black-eyed Susan shows up in gardens from Maine to Mississippi. It's reliable in a way that very few perennials match: sunny yellow petals, dark contrasting centers, and a bloom time that runs from midsummer all the way into fall. It fills exactly the gap that opens up in most gardens around July when early summer bloomers start winding down. That precise timing is why it earns its spot here. Expect flowers from July through September in most U.S. zones, with some varieties pushing color well into October. Full sun and well-drained soil are the two main requirements. Drought tolerance is solid once established. Deer tend to leave it alone, which matters in a lot of U.S. suburban and rural gardens where deer pressure is an ongoing reality. Deadhead through the season to keep color continuous. Every 3 to 4 years, divide the clumps in early spring or fall to maintain the plant's energy and prevent overcrowding. Left to spread naturally, Rudbeckia naturalizes beautifully over time, filling space in a way that suits meadow-style or informal garden settings without any extra effort on your part. Bees and butterflies work these flowers actively through August and September, providing real ecological value during the stretch of summer when pollinator food sources start thinning out. USDA zones 3 through 9. Plant 6, Veronica speedwell. Veronica doesn't get nearly enough attention in American gardens, and that's a genuine missed opportunity. The flower spikes are elegant, upright columns of blue, purple, pink, or white that rise cleanly above the foliage and hold their color for weeks on end. It brings a kind of refined vertical structure that softens and balances the look of rounder, bushier plants around it, and it does so for months. Bloom time runs from June through August, extending into September with consistent deadheading and a light midsummer trim. When a flower spike finishes, Cut it back to a set of leaves lower on the stem rather than all the way to the base. This encourages side shoots to develop into secondary bloom spikes that extend the season by several weeks. After the main summer flush, trim the whole plant back by about a third and fresh flowers follow within a few weeks. Water regularly in the first season. Once established, Veronica handles heat and dry periods well, though it appreciates consistent moisture during extended hot spells a bit more than some of the more drought-hardened plants on this list. Pest and disease problems are genuinely rare, one of the lower drama plants in any garden. It pairs particularly well with mounding plants like catmint and hardy geranium, where the contrast between vertical spikes and rounded shapes creates a planting that looks deliberately designed. USDA Zones 3 through 8. Plant 7. Nepeta catmint. Catmint is one of those plants that experienced gardeners keep coming back to year after year, and once you grow it, you'll understand exactly why. The flowers are soft lavender blue, carried on loose, relaxed stems that spill naturally over border edges and pathway margins. The foliage is gray-green and aromatic, rub a leaf, and the scent is clean and pleasant, somewhere between mint and fresh herbs. The whole plant has a cottage garden quality that feels genuinely unhurried and beautiful. Bloom time starts in late spring, often May in zones 5 and warmer, and runs continuously through early summer. Here's the care step that makes all the difference. After that first big wave of flowers fades, shear the entire plant back by a third. Not a light trim, a real shearing. Within 2 to 3 weeks, fresh new growth emerges and a second strong flush of blooms follows that carries color through August and September. Skip that shearing and the plant gets leggy and produces weak scattered flowers through the rest of summer. Do it, and you essentially get 2 full bloom seasons from one plant. Full sun is ideal, though catmint tolerates light afternoon shade in the hottest climates. It performs well in poor, well-drained soil, another plant that absolutely does not want or need rich amended beds. Walker's Low is the most widely available and best-performing variety in American gardens. Despite the name, it grows about 2 feet tall and wide, a genuinely substantial border plant. Deer-resistant, a magnet for bees and butterflies, and beautiful along any path or border edge. USDA Zones 3 through 8. Plant 8. Penstemon beard tongue. Penstemon is the plant on this list that most gardeners walk right past at the nursery without a second look, and that's a genuine shame. The flowers are long, slender, and tubular, carried in clusters on upright stems in rich reds, deep purples, soft pinks, clear blues, and clean whites. The structure of those flowers is specifically engineered for hummingbirds, and the hummingbird activity around a well-established penstemon planting through June and July is genuinely impressive. Bloom time runs from late spring well into summer, typically May through July in most U.S. zones, with some varieties extending into August and early September when deadheaded consistently. In zones 6 through 9, a hard cutback after the main flush often encourages a solid secondary bloom period later in the season. Once established, penstemon actually prefers drier conditions. It thrives in well-drained, even lean soil and actively dislikes consistently moist ground. This makes it an outstanding choice for xeriscapes and low-water gardens, which is a particularly strong advantage for gardeners in Colorado, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, and the drier parts of California. Heavy clay soil that holds moisture is the main thing to avoid. If your soil is clay-heavy, amend with coarse grit or plant in raised beds. It's one of the most underused perennials in American gardens given how consistently it performs. USDA Zones 4 through 9. Plant 9. Helenium sneezeweed. August is the hardest month for garden color in most U.S. climates. The early summer plants are done. The heat has been relentless for weeks, and most gardens look exhausted by mid-August. Helenium is one of the best answers to that specific problem. The blooms are fiery and bold, daisy-like flowers in rich shades of yellow, burnt orange, and deep red-brown, and they arrive right when the garden needs them most. Before we go further, it's worth clearing up the common name. Sneezeweed does not cause sneezing. This plant is insect-pollinated, not wind-pollinated, so the pollen never becomes airborne the way ragweed does. The name comes from an old practice of using dried leaves in herbal snuff. Don't let it put you off at the nursery. Bloom time runs from July through October, with peak color landing in August and September, precisely when most gardens have started losing their fight. Helenium prefers full sun and moist, well-drained soil, and it's one of the few plants on this list that genuinely appreciates consistent moisture. It performs particularly well near water features or in beds that receive regular irrigation. For tall varieties that reach 4 to 5 feet, pinch the growing tips back in late May to encourage bushier, sturdier growth that won't need staking later. That one step makes a meaningful difference in how the plant presents through its peak weeks. Bees and butterflies are extremely active around Helenium throughout its entire bloom period. USDA zones 3 through 8. Plant 10, hardy Geranium cranesbill. Before going further, one important clarification, because the confusion at garden centers is real and it costs people money every year. The bright red and salmon annual geraniums sold in pots every spring are pelargoniums. They're tender plants that don't survive winter in most U.S. zones. Hardy geranium, or cranesbill, is a completely different plant, a true perennial that comes back every year, spreads gradually to fill space, and asks for very little in return. The flowers are delicate, cup-shaped blooms in soft shades of pink, purple, blue, violet, and clean white, carry just above attractive lobed foliage that often develops good fall color before dying back. The overall effect is refined and natural, not showy in the way some plants on this list are showy, but genuinely beautiful in a way that wears well through a long season. And the foliage remains attractive and weed-suppressing long after flowers finish, which adds real value beyond the bloom period itself. The midsummer cutback is the most important care step. When the plant starts looking leggy and the first flush fades, usually in July, shear the whole thing back by about half. Fresh new growth comes back quickly, and a reliable second round of flowers follows into September. Full sun to partial shade makes hardy geranium one of the most adaptable plants on this list. It opens up planting opportunities that pure sun lovers can't fill. Deer-resistant, pest-resistant, and genuinely low maintenance once settled in. USDA zones 4 through 8. Plant 11, Scabiosa pincushion flower. Scabiosa earns its place on this list through pure staying power. The blooms are delicate and airy, rounded pincushion-shaped flower heads in soft shades of blue, lavender, pink, and white, carried on slender stems that sway gently in any passing breeze. The overall effect is light and graceful in a way that heavier, bolder plants can't provide, and that visual breathing room is something a well-planned summer garden genuinely needs. Bloom time is one of the longest on this entire list, late spring through fall, typically running from May all the way through October with consistent care. That kind of endurance across 5 to 6 months puts it among the top performers here for sheer duration. The flowers open in succession rather than all at once, which is part of why the season extends so naturally. Deadheading is the single most impactful thing you can do for Scabiosa. Remove spent flower heads every few days during peak bloom season, and the plant responds with a near-continuous stream of new buds. Full sun is ideal and well-drained soil is essential. This plant will decline quickly in heavy, wet soil. It performs beautifully in containers for gardeners with limited ground space, and it's a natural fit for cottage gardens, border edges, and cut flower gardens. Butterflies are drawn to Scabiosa with particular enthusiasm. It's one of the top butterfly plants on this entire list. USDA zones 3 through 7. In zones 8 and 9, provide afternoon shade to extend performance through the heat. Plant 12, Russian sage, Perovskia atriplicifolia. Russian sage is one of those plants that photographs beautifully, but actually looks even better in person. The flower spikes are long, airy, and lavender blue, not a sharp saturated blue, but a soft hazy color that seems to shimmer in afternoon light. The foliage is silvery and aromatic, and the whole plant has a loose, graceful movement when any breeze passes through it. In a border, it creates exactly the kind of soft backdrop that makes bolder, more saturated colors around it pop. Bloom time runs from midsummer all the way into fall, typically July through October. That late start is actually part of its value here. While some of the earlier bloomers are winding down in August, Russian sage is hitting its stride, carrying that lavender blue haze through the hottest and driest weeks of late summer and well into the cooler days of fall. The single most important care step happens in early spring before new growth emerges. Cut the entire plant back hard, down to about 12 to 18 inches from the ground. This is not optional. Russian sage blooms on new growth, so cutting back the old woody stems is what drives this season's flowers. Skip that spring cutback and the plant becomes increasingly woody and sparse over time. Do it consistently every spring and the plant stays full, upright, and floriferous for many years. Exceptionally drought-tolerant once established, one of the strongest performers on this list for hot, dry climates, thrives in the conditions that define summer gardening across the Great Plains, Mountain West, and Southwest: high heat, low humidity, limited rainfall, and alkaline soils. Deer-resistant. USDA zones 4 through 9. Plant 13, Crocosmia. Crocosmia is the plant on this list that makes people stop walking and actually look. The flower spikes are long, arching, and intensely colored: vivid red, burnt orange, and bright yellow blooms arranged in a branching pattern along stems that curve outward with natural elegance. The foliage is sword-like and upright, adding strong structural presence even before the flowers appear. The overall effect is tropical and dramatic without requiring anything close to tropical-level maintenance. Bloom time runs from July through September, stepping in as some of the earlier bloomers ease back and carrying bold, saturated color through August and in to September, when garden energy often starts flagging. Hummingbirds are drawn to Crocosmia with exceptional enthusiasm. The tubular, nectar-rich flowers are precisely the shape and color that hummingbirds target, and a well-established clump in full bloom can be remarkably active with hummingbird visits through the heart of summer. In zones 6 and warmer, Crocosmia is reliably winter-hardy with no special protection needed. In zone 5 and colder, apply a generous 3 to 4 inch layer of mulch over the root zone in late fall to insulate the corms through winter, or dig them after the first frost and store indoors like dahlias. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in early spring when growth is just emerging. Crocosmia spreads steadily by producing offsets, and without periodic division the clumps become congested and bloom production declines. Full sun, well-drained soil. USDA zones 5 through 9. Plant 14, Sedum stonacrop. Sedum earns its place on this list differently from most of the other plants here. Where others lead with their flowers, Sedum brings structural presence and textural interest from the moment it emerges in spring, long before the blooms arrive. The fleshy succulent leaves are attractive all season in shades of green, blue-green, burgundy, and near purple, depending on the variety. Then from mid to late summer into fall, flat-topped clusters of star-shaped flowers open in pink, red, white, or soft yellow, and the whole plant becomes a landing platform for butterflies and bees. Bloom time runs from August through October in most U.S. zones, specifically targeting the late summer and fall stretch when a lot of gardeners have mentally given up on new color for the year. That timing makes Sedum genuinely valuable as a season extender rather than just another summer bloomer. Sedum is one of the most undemanding plants on this entire list. Full sun and well-drained soil are the two non-negotiable requirements. Beyond those, it needs almost nothing. Autumn Joy is one of the most widely available and best-performing varieties in American gardens. Pinch the growing tips back once in late May to encourage bushier, more compact growth that holds upright through the bloom season without flopping. That one step makes a noticeable difference. Deer-resistant, exceptionally drought tolerant, and one of the most reliable late-season butterfly plants available. For hot, dry, neglected spots where other perennials repeatedly fail, south-facing slopes, areas near pavement, thin rocky soil, Sedum often performs when nothing else will. USDA Zones 3 through 9. Plant 15, Japanese Anemone. This is the plant that was worth staying for, and it earns that position honestly. Japanese Anemone does something that none of the other 14 plants here can do. It blooms with full, beautiful, refined color in late summer and fall, specifically during the weeks when most gardens have already given up, and most gardeners have stopped expecting anything new from their beds. The flowers are elegant and simple. Delicate, poppy-like blooms in clean white, soft pink or rose, with a prominent central boss of yellow stamens that catches the light beautifully. They're carried on tall, wiry stems that rise well above the attractive lobed foliage and move with a natural, graceful sway in any breeze. The overall effect is refined rather than bold, a quieter beauty that actually becomes more appreciated as the season winds down and everything else in the garden begins its gradual retreat toward fall. Bloom time runs from late summer into fall, typically August through October in most U.S. zones, with some varieties in zones 6 and warmer pushing into November. Varieties worth seeking out by name include Honorine Jobert, a classic white that was named Perennial Plant of the Year, and Fall in Love Sweetly, a semi-double pink that butterflies love. The plant reaches its full bloom potential in its second or third year in the ground. First-year plants often produce limited flowers while establishing roots, so patience in early seasons is genuinely rewarded. Japanese Anemone prefers partial shade. Morning sun with afternoon shade is ideal, though it adapts to full sun in cooler climates with consistent moisture available. Moist, well-drained soil rich in organic matter suits it best. Work compost into the planting area before establishing new plants, and apply 2 to 3 inches of mulch to retain soil moisture through summer and protect roots through winter. Water consistently through the growing season. This is one of the plants on this list that genuinely appreciates regular moisture. The plant spreads gradually over time by underground runners, slowly forming attractive colonies that fill space with increasing grace each year, an asset in most garden settings. Deer-resistant, minimal pest and disease problems. USDA Zones 4 through 8. That's the complete list. 15 perennials that are genuinely proven across American gardens, all of them capable of carrying real color from early summer through fall and coming back stronger every year. The midsummer gap that leaves so many gardens looking empty and tired from July through September is entirely solvable. It just comes down to knowing which plants to put in the ground from the start. Now here's the question worth leaving you with. Which of these 15 grows in your garden right now, and which one surprised you most? Either because it performed better than you expected, or because you'd never come across it before today. Drop your answer in the comments below and include your growing zone if you know it. That kind of exchange is genuinely useful for every gardener watching, and it's exactly the conversation that makes this community worth being part of. See you in the next one.